Okay, so we're going to try and do a split portrait collage like this. And this is by a photographer called Shae de Tar. And you can see they've sort of created this almost like a cracked mirror kind of effect, with obviously one image sort of replicated several times, although I do think the images are from just slightly various angles. What I've done, I have already downloaded an image from Pexels here, so I just chose a portrait that I found that I think would be easy to adjust later on in terms of trying to enhance this lip colour. I can also play around with the colour to try to get into more of these like cool tones that's in the Shae de Tar image. So I'm going to use this one to begin with. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press Command J on the Mac, or Control J if you're on a PC, in order to duplicate it. I'm going to need to do this several times. I'm just going to do a couple to begin with. I probably need to do a few more as I go along. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the pen tool over here. I'm going to select a sort of center point that I'm going to have these sort of triangles coming out from. So I want to have some kind of like point on Shae de Tar's image. It's slightly sort of off center. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to have it roughly in this area, and I'm going to have the triangles coming outwards to create that refracted kind of effect. So let's have a look. I'm going to start here. Now, when you use the pen tool, when you make 2 points of reference, they automatically join up with a straight line, like so. So because we're working with triangles, that's going to be really handy for us. So I'm just going to do that. Now over here, I'm going to come into paths instead, and you can see that shape I've drawn here. And I'm going to come down here and select this button, which will turn the path I've created into a selection, like so. I'm then going to go back onto layers, and I'm then going to press the mask tool. And what should happen is, if I get rid of the other layers behind it, you'll be able to see what's happened, is the part that I've selected stays visible, and then the rest of it has been masked, and you can see that in that black and white mask layer there. So you can see the white part is the visible part, and the black bit has been hidden. So let's make visible the layer below it, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to press Command T, which is the shortcut for free transform. You can also get to that through edit as well, and selecting free transform that way. And if I move it, oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong layer. Let me click on that one. Let's try that again, Command T. There we go. So you can see I'm moving that layer underneath. So the reason I've worked on this top layer to begin with is so that when I move in these bottom layers underneath it, I can still see where the previous triangle was, and I can kind of then adjust where I want the next set of lips to appear. Okay, so I'm going to have it there. I'm going to press Enter on the keyboard to settle the image. I've still got my pen tool selected. I'm going to come to that center point again. I'm going to try to create another triangle like so. Again, follow the same process, go to path, turn it to a selection, come back to layers and mask it like so. And then let's make the next layer visible and select it, make sure I'm working on it this time. Command T, let's drop this one down roughly about there, and then settle the image, and then let's draw another triangle. So I'm just going to carry on this process for a little while. If I encounter any difficulties, I'll explain what I'm doing now. Path, selection, back to layers, and mask. There we go. So on this one, I don't know if you can see this. Let me zoom in slightly. You can see I've created a little bit of a gap here. So when that happens, what you can do is go to free transform, so Command T or Control T. I can try and move it slightly so that it comes up closer. I've still got this little bit of a gap here on the side. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to press Shift whilst I just ever so slightly enlarge the image. I'm not going to enlarge it too much because I don't want it to look a different size to the rest of the portraits, but I think a small adjustment won't matter. And I make sure I keep Shift pressed down so that I don't alter the dimensions of the portrait. turn, and you can see that settled and there's no gap anymore. Right, I'm just going to create a few more duplicate layers on here, and then make this one visible. Command T, let's drop it down, and then create another triangle on my pen tool. Path, selection, back to layers, mask it off, and again you can see the same thing's happened again. There was this little bit of a gap, so again I'm just going to go Command T, just going to adjust it slightly. Now what I'm not too concerned about, the gaps going around the edge of the image here, because I can always crop it later, but I definitely don't want there being any gaps in between the slices. Next one, Command T again. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer, sorry, hang on. That one there. Command T, that's better. I'll drop that one down there. And press enter. And we go again, same process again. Path, selection, and mask. On the next one, let's move this one. Path, selection, and let's mask it. Good. Make the other one visible, and so on. That one looks a little bit on the small side, so I'm just going to enlarge it ever so slightly. Okay, I'm going to pull it the other way slightly. Let me zoom back in. I think that's as good as I'm going to get it on there. As I said before, I'm not too concerned about there being any gap around the edge, because we're going to crop it before we finish. I'm probably going to need a couple more layers, so let's duplicate a few more. And then free transform. Selection, I want it to be, it goes better. Layers and mask it. Oh. I'm just going to take a few steps back because I'm not quite happy with that one. Let me try that again. Here we go. If you're not used to using this history palette over here, by the way, this is a good way of taking some steps back. It shows you the last steps that you took, and you can obviously choose where to go back to, but obviously the ones that are then in front of it are then eliminated. But it is handy if you realise you've made a mistake and you need to go back. That looks better. Right, let's have a look. Make another one visible. Command T. I'm going to try and get another two, I think. Another two triangles in here. Pen tool. selection and mask it. Lovely, and then I need one more. Now this one, I don't need to do anything to. I can just adjust it into that window that's left behind there. There we go. So that's the positioning done. Now the other thing that we need to do is looking at this original image by Shae de Tar. It's not in that sharp focus, but I think we need to apply a little bit of a blur. The colour palette is quite cool, so you can see that the skin tone, you know, there's not much yellows or oranges or anything. I know there's that bright red in the lips, which we will do in just a second, but the overall colour palette is quite cool. So we're probably going to need to put some kind of filter on. Let's find Photoshop again. There we go. So let's start with that. Let's start with the colour filter. So I'm going to go to photo filter here. Now these are presets that you can select, and it will show you what will happen if you put a particular filter over the top. Oh, I know what I need to do. At this point, sorry, you will need to flatten the image. So once you're happy with the positioning of everything, you'll need to flatten the image. So what I would suggest you do is save this as a Photoshop document, and then also you could also save it as a JPEG as well. Tell me what I'm going to do. I'm going to crop the edges ever so slightly. So that we get rid of those missing pixels. I'm using the keyboard arrows because sometimes they're a bit more sensitive than the mouse. So I'm just going to crop it like that initially, and then I'm going to flatten this down. And when I do that, that means that all these layers won't be separate anymore. So when I make adjustments to it, it's going to affect the whole image rather than just that one slice like I did a second ago. So I'm going to flatten. So only do this when you're completely happy with it. That's why it might be worth you saving it as a separate Photoshop document and then reopening it and naming it something else. So you've got your previous one to fall back on if this doesn't work out how you want. So I'm going to flatten the image. It's going to discard the hidden layers, which is the very, very bottom background layer, so that's fine with me. And you can see it's all been flattened down into one layer now. So now, when I go back to the photo filter, it should apply to the whole image, like so. Okay. You can see what happens when I select different colours. You can see the overall sort of effect that happens. Different colours are emphasised. You know, if you've got an image that's like particularly yellow because of the kind of lighting it's been taken in, or cool because it's been under a cool light, you can choose one of these then to make particular adjustments. And we'll see what one of these cool filters looks like. I don't mind that, but it's a little bit shiny. Let's see what happens if I play with the density or take the shine off a little bit. That green one gone? No, our background's far too yellow with that. Let's see what happens with blue. No, I'm going to stick with the cooling one, I think. I am going to preserve the luminosity. I'm wondering whether just to take the density down ever so slightly. We'll go with that for now. Now then, I want to try to give her the same kind of colour effect on the lips like this model has. So let's see if replace colour will work. So you can see when I hover over the image, I've got this eyedropper tool. So I'm going to hover over the lip colour like so and click it. And you can see that it's selected this colour here, and you can see roughly the areas on the image that are in white that's going to be affected now by this colour replacement. If I slide this hue slider along, you can see obviously the dramatic changes that take place with that. I want something quite red. to go about here, but on the saturation bar, I'm just going to push the saturation slightly so that it becomes more red, like in the Shae de Tar image. So we'll go with that for now. The other thing to do is to create a blur on here. Before I do that, I wonder if the colour replace will work on the background as well. Let's see if I can make the background quite bluey to match Shae de Tar. I'm not going to play on the lightness or the saturation. It starts to look a little bit too unrealistic that way, so no, I'm going to leave that as it is. Let's do the blue. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to have a blue effect in the entire image. I want to have some parts in focus. But you can see on the Shae de Tar image, particularly around the edges, you know, this is quite blurry. The eye is drawn particularly to the red lips because of the strong colour, and also because it looks like they're slightly more in focus than the background face. So let's use the ellipsis tool up here. I'm going to roughly circle around the lips like so. Now I want to come up to select and I want to modify it. I want to feather the edges. And the reason I want to do that is if I don't feather it, there's going to be a very clear line between the blurred section and the non-blurred section. So I want to have some pixels selected. Let's try 150. There we go. We'll see what happens with that now. Then after that, you want to select inverse. So now it's this area that's selected and that's going to have the filter applied to it and not the ellipsis in the middle. Filter, and then come down to blur, Gaussian blur here, and then you'll see there's a slider here which allows me to alter the strength of the blur. You can see it happening in the main image here, and you can also see it on the preview here as well. I'm going to bring it down slightly. I don't want it to be too obvious. And press OK, and then Command D to deselect. Now it could be that I might think, oh, actually that blur isn't enough. So you can use the history palette. You can go back, and then you can go to the select inverse, apply a filter again, blur, Gaussian blur, and then this time push it a little bit more maybe. Let's try that one. There we go, so a bit more of an obvious blur coming through on that one now. So that's not looking too bad. I've definitely got the sort of similar repeat pattern that Shae de Tar has achieved. I think the colour scheme perhaps isn't quite right. You know, she's got some images which are very, very cool in nature. I have tried to tone down the warmth of this image, but maybe I could do a little bit more. Let's have a look if there's anything else I can do. Let's try hue and saturation. I might bring the saturation up slightly just to emphasise the redness of the lips. I don't really want to apply that to all of it. Actually, I'm going to cancel that a second. Let's try on the channel mixer. I think I'll stick with the red for a second. So on the red, this is only going to affect the hopefully the red colours. I can push that slightly, but obviously it's going to affect the entire image. Does make it a bit cooler, but I'm losing that intensity of the red of the lip, so I think I might cancel that one. Let's try that again, but maybe with one of the other colours. Let's see what happens if I select the green one. And then let's try blue. It's always good to have a bit of an experiment and see what happens. Now I prefer the way that I've managed to get rid of some of the yellow coming through in the background. That yellow's not so strong, so I'm going to press OK on that. It's looking much more pink now rather than red, but at least there is a strong colour coming through, which is very similar to the Shae de Tar image. Let's see if I can boost the saturation slightly again, just to intensify that pink a little bit. There we go. So there we go. That is a spliced portrait, similar in the style of Shae de Tar.